Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has kicked off a 5-week race to the polls, calling a federal election for the 3rd of May. So what economic issues will Australians be focusing on? And particularly when it comes to the housing market, we're going to drill into the advisory now with Kitty Parker from Kitty and Miles joining me. Kitty, great to see you. I mean, you're a buyer's agent, so we're talking here about property in particular. Without sort of looking too deeply into the election impact at the moment, just tell us what buyers agents do and why people would do this rather than doing it themselves.
Great question. In the current market, especially in Sydney, it is very, very difficult to purchase on your own. Gone are the pre-COVID days where it was rather easy to do it yourself as a home buyer. So these days, a buyer's agent is a lot more of a necessity and not just a fancy add-on for those that can afford it.
Well, I was going to say, does it then create more headwind for people that are worried already about getting into the property market and the expense attached?
If you consider a buyer's agent's fee a really solid return on your investment, it's a way to get you into the market typically within 4 to 6 weeks, rather than you waiting and doing it yourself and potentially taking a year or longer to get into the market. And if we see how much prices have gone up in the last 12 months, that buyer's agent fee is a drop in the ocean when you consider the growth that you can achieve getting into the property market sooner.
Well, let's talk about the federal election now. It has been called for the 3rd of May. We don't know who is going to lead, but do you think that enough on either side in terms of what they've pledged in the budget and of course the right of reply has been done to potentially address the housing shortage?
Quite frankly, no. I feel that we're not really getting to the grassroots issues of the housing crisis, but I also understand that with the election, housing is probably going to be a huge draw card. So I do believe both major parties will really dig in and try and sway the election results really based on their housing policy.
You've been working obviously in the Sydney market for a long time. We know that there is an undersupply there. Is that sort of getting worse when you look at some of these capital city growth and I guess how many people want to live in these cities too?
It very much depends on the city and the pockets within the city. So you may be able to, the best phrase I guess is to say it's a very multi-dynamic, multi-tiered market. There will be some areas where it is really the stock levels are being squeezed and it's virtually impossible to get in. There will be some peripheral areas though where it's still a little bit more affordable and easier for buyers to get in. But that does mean that often, especially first home buyers, they're needing to really compromise on their wish list to get in.
You also advocate a lot for women in finance. Tell us how important it is potentially, I guess, for security as well, that women do have their own assets.
It's very important for women to have their own assets, especially with divorce rates increasing, with women typically not having full-time tenure in the workforce for the same length of time as men, as well as typically being the primary caregiver, so taking time from their career to raise children. Each of these lead to women in their retirement years actually having less in the bank. So it's imperative for women, especially from a very young age, to think about their future and set up their investment strategy in their 20s to enable them to retire, or not even retire, but to go through the 40 plus years, ages 40, 50, etc., with enough wealth creation to maintain a quality of life for them.
And how important that is that as well, given that the largest number of homelessness in Australia, or the growing number, is women over 50?
Absolutely. It's almost an unspoken demographic where women over 50 that have careers, have full-time jobs, they're falling through the cracks. They typically don't own property, so they're renters, and with the rent squeeze that we're experiencing, they're just finding that more than 70% of their income is going on their rent, and they're living somewhat below the poverty line, even though they're full-time employed and they don't appear to be the socioeconomic demographic that is below the poverty line, but they're really struggling.
So you say women should start looking at their future in their 20s. For those that might have missed that boat, of course it's never too late, but what is some of your advice in terms of what people should be doing, and I guess more broadly men as well?
Yes, you're really talking about the mature age female catch-up. I call it the catch-up, and usually it's post-divorce. Sometimes their children will be in their teenage years or university years, and they're looking to play catch-ups and work out, how do I build a little nest egg for myself? Because I've spent the last 20 years raising children, now it's time for me, and me looking at my retirement. This is where property investment really comes into play, and it has to be very strategic and aligned with a team dynamic. You need a good accountant, a good financial advisor, because you're looking to really set up your future starting later in life. So property investment and doing it the right way is imperative for that demographic.
What's your view on rent vesting if people can't afford to buy where they live but they invest elsewhere?
It can be a really savvy way to either maintain the quality of life that you're enjoying, so you don't have to sacrifice there, but you're also building some wealth creation for yourself via property. Alternatively, it can be a really clever way of getting yourself your principal place of residence via a tricky way, so to speak, of investing and bolstering equity, building capital over a number of years, and then buying back into the area that you want to live once you've bolstered your equity and your capital there and coming back in.
And not being invested at all, I mean, obviously we're looking at diversification here, but is rent money dead money in your view?
Actually, I'd say no. I know that's not popular opinion, but as housing affordability really becomes quite a widespread problem, the idea of renting and maintaining your quality of life and being able to potentially go on that vacation or go out with friends or do things that you enjoy, that has a price to it as well. And we definitely are seeing with Generation Z that they're often choosing to not buy and go, I want my quality of life. I really want to enjoy, say, the next 10, 20 years. I don't want to be locked down to working, 40, 60 hours a week, paying that mortgage. I want the quality of life. So it really much depends on the individual and what their preferences are, their goals.